slot machine gamblers actually stop wanting to win. They don't want to win because winning stops the chase. And I think that our kids, we end up in similar cycles with like social media and video games where we're just in these loops of chasing.
As humans, dopamine drives us to explore, create, and grow. But in today's modern world, that biological drive is being exploited to keep us wanting more. Hi, I'm Dr. Sarah Bren, a clinical psychologist and mom of two, and the host of the Securely Attached podcast. Each week, I sit down with leading experts in psychology, neuroscience, medicine, and child development to translate complex science into practical, grounded parenting insights that you can actually use in daily life. This week, I'm joined by science journalist and best-selling author Michaeleen Doucleff. Her new book, Dopamine Kids, explores what's really happening in our children's brains when it comes to screens, social media, ultra-processed foods, and overstimulation. In this conversation, we break down what dopamine actually does in the brain and why it's not simply the pleasure chemical that it's so often simplified to be. We talk about how technology and food environments are carefully engineered to tap into our seeking systems, why that can lead both kids and adults to feel restless and unsatisfied, and what it means to restore the natural cycle of motivation and fulfillment. Most importantly, we explore small, sustainable shifts that you can make in your home, not massive overhauls, but small things that help bring more peace, color, and genuine satisfaction back into daily life. This is, to me, such a relatable episode. And I would not be surprised if, as you listen, you start to recognize your own patterns in our conversation. And if that happens, and you're realizing that you're ready to make a change for yourself or your kids, or your family, I want you to know that that's something that we can help you with. At my group practice, Upshur Bren Psychology Group, we offer therapy and parent coaching designed to help families interrupt cycles that feel hard to shift. Because when you're deeply immersed in daily habits, whether that's screens, food, reactivity, power struggles, or even your own relationship patterns, it can be incredibly difficult to see your way out. When you are in it, it can feel normal, inevitable, or just too overwhelming to change. And that's where having a trained impartial mental health professional alongside of you can make a big difference. So we help you step back, understand what's driving the pattern, and create sustainable, meaningful shifts, not through shame or willpower, but through insight, evidence-based strategies, and support. With offices in Westchester, New York, we offer both in-person and virtual therapy, as well as coaching for families around the world. If you'd like support, you can schedule a free 30-minute consultation by clicking the link in the episode description wherever you're streaming this podcast, or visit upshurbren.com to learn more. That's upshurbren.com. Okay, now let's get into my conversation with Michaeleen Doucleff. Hello, Michaeleen. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
I am really excited about this conversation. And your new book, Dopamine Kids, just came out last week. I am really excited to have you on the show to talk about this because this book, it touches on so many things that are really, really pressing on parents right now. It talks about screens and ultra-processed foods and overstimulation and all the stuff. So I'm excited to dive in. To start, the book's called Dopamine Kids.
Yes.
So can you start a little bit first just by explaining the thought behind that title? Like, what was driving this? This messaging?
So a couple things. I think, first of all, there's like huge misconceptions around this one brain chemical, dopamine. And we have all these myths about it. And when I started diving deep into it, because I was trying to fix my own problem with my phone, but also my kids' problem with the screens. I started to realize that these misconceptions were actually holding us back and making our lives harder. It was making it harder for us to regulate both screens and ultra processed foods, it was making us crave them more. And once I kind of figured out what's actually happening with this magical molecule dopamine, it was, our lives were so much easier. And actually what I realized was something really surprising, that what works with these products is not deprivation. So it's not making your life smaller, saying no more often. It's actually like adding more joy to your life. It's once we understand how dopamine works, we realize that it's about reclaiming pleasure and adding more pleasure, creating more moments of fun and play and excitement. It's not about depriving kids of pleasure. And so once you have that perspective, making limits and making room for other things, other activities, and other foods becomes so much easier. And your life actually gets better because you're adding more pleasure, you're adding more joy, you're adding more excitement. So I just keep coming back to this idea over and over again, that once we create a healthy relationship with these products, your life gets brighter, it gets more colorful, and your home is so much more peaceful.
Oh, well, that you're piquing my interest. And it's funny because, I'm a psychologist and I work with kids and parents, and I know a good amount about the brain. And I'm still like, you're saying, like the drive to write this book came out of your own search to like look at your phone use and your kid's screen use.
Yeah.
I also am like, I know all the stuff, and like I'm certainly looking for ways to get off my phone because it's so sticky for me.
Yeah.
I have ADHD, and it's like, it really gets very sticky for me. And my kids are also on screens a lot too. And it doesn't work for us, but I also haven't yet figured out like, I know all the rules, quote rules. And I think you're going to have some insights for me on this, I think, because I think that's a big part of your book, is that a lot of the strategies we've been using are based on some kind of myths or antiquated knowledge. And
yes,
I just really excited to break all this down personally, and also just for all our listeners. But maybe to start, it would help just to like level everyone's playing field. Can you explain in really simple terms, like what dopamine is and what it does in our child's brain or in our brain?
Yes. So dopamine is a chemical in our brain, like a chemical messenger is what, we kind of think of it as. But for since about the 50s, in the 1950s, there were all these experiments where they tried to get animals, so rats, pigeons, people, mice, people too, to basically press a button as much as possible. It's almost like they had like an iPad, and there was like press a button, press a button, press a button. And they found that when they stimulated the region of the brain where dopamine is really important, all of these creatures, including the people, just could not stop pressing this button. It was like they were just obsessed, like thousands and thousands of times an hour. Like they wouldn't go to the bathroom, they wouldn't take a shower. They were just, and there was this really big assumption that was made at this time that it was because they were feeling pleasure. And that when you activate this part of the brain, it's the pleasure center of the brain. And it led to this whole belief in neuroscience and psychology that we do things over and over again, and we get obsessed with things like in obsessive loops because there's so much pleasure and we just don't want to get away from the pleasure. In about the 90s, there was a young neuroscientist at the University of Michigan, Kent Berge, who had these experiments that basically overturned this whole idea. And it took him a long time to believe him himself and get the rest of the field to believe him. And at the same time, there was another scientist in Germany who was like, wait a second, dopamine does something else. It's actually not about pleasure. And what's happened is over the last 30 years or so, this pleasure hypothesis has just been completely overturned. And what the science actually tells us is that dopamine in this part of our brain that's driving us to press the button over and over again, do it again. I like to say dopamine is the do it again button in your brain. What they're finding is that dopamine doesn't cause pleasure. And when we activate this part of our brain, we're not just feeling pleasure, more and more pleasure. It gives us a sense of wanting and desire and even craving. It makes us go seek out what we need to survive. And so it really pulls us to things. And what we're learning is sometimes those things make us feel great, and especially at the beginning when we first start doing them. But sometimes, and especially over time, the pleasure starts to go away, but we can still really want them. So the products we have in our lives today and our children have are really pressing on the wanting button in our brain and not necessarily the pleasure. And pleasure actually is encoded by a separate, pretty much separable part of the brain. And they can come apart. And I think that is what we're seeing, is that these products can slowly pull apart wanting from pleasure. And so what I started to realize with myself was that, whoa, when I spend an hour on social media, it's all about wanting. It's just wanting to stay on there. And the pleasure has just totally declined. And I'm staying on there because I can't help it. I'm not staying on there for pleasure. And I started to see that same behavior in my daughter. And so it became so much easier to start regulating these devices for both of us.
And was that partly, I mean, for yourself, but really also for your daughter, was it in helping her become more aware of the decline in the pleasure? Like how?
Yeah.
How did you help her gain insight into this?
So when I first started like working on this and like trying to teach her this, she was about 6. And I don't think at that age she could really get it, you know? Mm-hmm. I think it was at that age, it was more about me being aware that how she behaved afterwards and her behavior during wasn't signs of pleasure, right? And that the whole experience every day of pulling her off the screen was not pleasurable for her or for me, right? She'd get so angry and upset. I mean, she's a wonderful kid. Like, she's amazing. And like 2 hours on Netflix would turn her into just this horrible emotional wreck, right? And it was like, wait a second, this is not pleasure. I could start to see in her this drive of wanting, this kind of compulsive, obsessive seeking behavior that I felt, right? Mm-hmm. And so then it became like, whoa, Michaeleen, when you tell her to stop, or let's say you just decide we're not going to have screens after dinner, you know, big move, right? We're not going to have screens on the weekend, big move. You're not taking away pleasure from her. You're going to give her a different activity. And this is a big part of the book, is when you take something away, it doesn't work. You got to replace it. And in fact, I think what we should shift how we see limits and with these products and see them as opportunities to give kids something better, to discover something better for their lives, right? And so,
I mean, it's marketing, right? Like, instead of calling it limit, maybe we call it an addition
or opportunity for more fun. I mean, I'm not kidding. I when you start to see it, and you know, there's really interesting data here in the food world that backs this up. But when you start to see a kid thrive offline, you start to realize, like, no, this is more pleasure. This is more exciting. So let me give you an example. Like, at some point I was like, okay, we're not doing screens after dinner. Like, I'm just done. I'm just tired of the nightly routine, and I'm not sure what I'm getting from it. You know, I mean, so instead of saying to Rosie, like, okay, no screens, no Netflix, no YouTube, you're done. Like, that's no fun, right? That's just like, she wants it more. You get in a fight, you know, and you're kind of, everyone's frustrated. So what I said to her was, I said, and you know, this actually comes from like 20 years of behavioral psychology in this strategy. But what I said to her was like, okay, we're going to take a break from screens. No big deal. I'm not going to make a big deal about it. And instead, I'm going to teach you something you've been dying to do. So dopamine system is like motivation to do things that we need to survive. And for kids, that includes food and water, but it also includes like exploration, taking risks, being creative, going on adventures. And so I'm going to tap into that same system, and I'm going to say, you know, you've been wanting to learn to ride your bike to the market alone, and I haven't had time. So I'm going to teach you to do that. Right. And so I'm replacing it with something that I think is just as alluring, just as interesting, in some ways more exciting for her than sitting there watching other kids ride their bike around, right? And, and I'm not leaving her empty-handed, right? I'm not telling her to go into her room and have independent play or be okay with boredom, right? I'm inviting her to discover something exciting in her life, you know? And so
So you're basically leveraging It's interesting. I will say this a lot with parents when I'm teaching about self-regulation, right? It's like when you're really mad and you want to scream or smack someone or throw something, and we try to teach a kid to like do something else, or even a grown-up to like do something else. It's not like take deep breaths and have a cup of chamomile tea.
Yes.
Really meets the intensity of the need for that like expressive output of hitting or throwing. So it's like you have to kind of be willing to teach a kid to match the intensity with an alternative.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing the exact sort of same thing here in a different system, right? So you're saying so I'm thinking about with rage, I need to give a kid something just as powerful as hitting. So usually I'll start with like, I'm so mad and I'm stomping my foot, and I will like literally show a kid that they can do that. And it kind of like is a little bit exciting to them because I'm like losing it in front of them. But it's the same thing I'm hearing, right? Is if I'm going to replace television or Netflix or YouTube or iPad with something else, it has to hit the same level of intensity of the seeking system, that dopamine hit, that satisfaction of like that driving force that says more, 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 more.
Yes.
So it can't be, to your point, independent play or be okay with boredom. That's a good thing to have, but it's not a substitute. Like do that at other times. Don't do that when you're trying to like wean someone off of YouTube.
Exactly. Like the kids will actually learn that skill really pretty easily once they have these other skills in their life, right? Once they have these other hobbies and activities. But yes, exactly. I call it in the book, ride their motivational wave, right? So like dopamine is motivating them to do something that they feel like is survival, right? That's what the dopamine system is, survival. And they feel like Lego Girls on Netflix is survival. That's what they feel. Of course, it's not.
Because the brain is telling them that. Because tell me if I'm getting this right. But what's the problem is that the ultra processed content, right? The ultra processed like quick video. It's lighting up the dopamine centers of the brain over and over and over again, which is telling the bidirectional communication that the body is then getting, the body and the mind, is there is this inner drive to keep going, going, going. I'm then interpreting that on some unconscious base level.
Yes.
This is critical for my survival. I must have more. I must have more. I must have more. I must keep going, going, going. So then we think it's critical to our survival.
That's right.
It's super important because the brain's, this system that these products are like kind of hijacking.
Yes. Tapping into. Yes.
Get us to believe on some base level, this must happen more.
And and the dopamine system is, so it's seeking, it's wanting, it's desire, but it also is value. Right. And that's another half of it. I talked about the German scientist. That's Wilhelm Schultz. He was the one in the 90s too, that like showed that when the dopamine neurons fire, it's like, do it again. But it's also like, this is valuable. Remember this. So as think about like a gambler, right, who is pressing a slot machine button over and over again, that when they're addicted to gambling, that becomes the most important thing in their life, the only thing, right? And so that's another trick here. And I is that over time, as we use these products more and more, they become so valuable in our lives that to take it away feels so awful to a child, right? This is what I need to survive. Like my 13-year-old niece told me one day that her phone was her mom. And I was like, no, it's not your mom. And she's like, no, that's my mom. Like, that's my mom. And that gets into this other phenomenon called sign tracking, which is in the book. But it's like, over time, we start to like value these devices and apps and foods. Well, foods are a little bit different, but devices and apps so much that we actually think they are the things that they represent, And so you're exactly right. You can, if you just take it away, the dopamine plummets, and then that just feels like disappointment. That just feels like oh, I'm expecting all of this stuff to happen and it's not happening. And so what I'm saying is let's take all that motivation, all that excitement, and let's use it for something that's going to help you in life, learn a skill. And eventually it's going to help me too, because if you learn to bike to the store, you can go to the store for me. You can take yourself to piano practice, which she's doing in about an hour.
Amazing.
But also like, you're going to feel satisfied afterwards, right? Because that's what's missing in Lego girls and Netflix and Instagram and video games is the feeling of like, whoa, I got what I needed. I fulfilled my need in life and I'm satisfied, right? Because if these things made us feel satisfied, we would stop, right? I'm done.
Yeah.
So the dopamine system is supposed to get us out there, get what we need. And then these other, which are called hedonic hotspots, come on and they make us feel like, I'm done.
Well, because
I
that's
can
the
take a
natural
break.
cycle, right? Because these systems, that's the natural cycle.
That's
right?
the natural cycle. Exactly.
Like, these systems are in our brain for a reason. Yes. They're not designed to be constantly activated. They're designed to move us through a cycle. And that's like, okay, the dopamine system comes on to tell us, yes, keep going. And then once we finish, we're supposed to then switch over to a different system that says, you've done, now rest.
Exactly. Like I'm tired. I have enough. And I think that is what and that's pleasure. Like that's part of the pleasure. Like seeking can be pleasurable, but too much seeking becomes frustrating, right? And over time, seeking can be really horrible. That's the whole Greek mythology of Tantalus, right? But when you get what you need, that is where the pleasure comes. And that is where the color comes back into your life. That's what I felt. I was just chasing. Yeah. One of the neuroscientists told me it's no longer about the rabbit. It's just about chasing, right? And we fall in love with this chase and we get obsessed with the chase. And I was just chasing. And I was like never feeling like real pleasure. And it was making me really gray and gloomy and kind of agitated and anxious. And that's what made me really, when I learned this idea of like chasing and not lighting up that, fulfilling that cycle that you're talking about, I was like, this is what our kids need. Our kids need to fulfill this cycle, like every day, I mean, dopamine is so strong, right? Especially for kids. It's supposed to get them to take risks, try hard things, work hard, learn to use a knife, learn to use fire, go out there on your own and do something that's scary. I call in the book scary, but fun. Like this is what the dopamine system is for. And so let's use it for that. And at the same time, like you say, like wean them off these things that don't bring that satisfaction.
Yeah. The devices, it's like a tape that skips. You know what I mean?
Yes,
it's like,
exactly.
Go. There's like, but
yes,
there's no
it's actually skipping the reward. Actually, that's what it's called sign tracking in the neuroscience parlance is when you, and animals do it too. You actually start skipping past getting a reward and you're just going want. And so you're missing, gamblers, slot machine gamblers actually stop wanting to win. They don't want to win because winning stops the chase. And I think that our kids we end up in similar cycles with like social media and video games where we're just in these loops of chasing. It's like some people call it like a dark flow state, but it's very unsatisfying and it's very hard on me. I don't enjoy it. And I don't think kids enjoy it, but you're just missing the reward in life. You're missing the pleasure. And so that's that's what Dopamine Kids is about. It's about understanding that when we put limits on these devices and these foods, and we set up what I call sanctuaries in our life where other activities and other foods take center stage or they're really the only option, we're not depriving kids of pleasure. We're putting pleasure back into their lives. And I 100% believe it. I see it every day.
Right. Yeah. And I could see this like as the adult, right? We might be telling ourselves, I would feel so guilty taking this away from them. But I'm going to remind myself there is so much that gets put back in when I center this. Because
yes, exactly. It's so much better.
Yeah. I mean, and so like intellectually, I get that. I'm thinking like, you probably have to get a kid on board. And I think that's harder, but I think it could be done. Like, I'm curious, like what you found to be successful and like what, like in the book, do you talk a little bit about the application? Cause I'm also like,
Yes.
okay, I use screens. I put my kids on screens when I need a break.
Yes.
Like I talk to so many parents that are like, I don't know if I could even really give that up because I need it for them.
Right. It's right. It's you choosing it for them. I mean, I think that is, you hit like the spot. I mean, like we value them, right? They're working on our brains the same way, right? So it's very hard to take away something that we value as well.
And it's a little front loading of the work. I'm mindful of that.
It is a little, it is.
Lot, where you're like, because I could hear a parent hear you say, I'm taking away, not only am I taking away screens after dinner, so I have to deal with my kid freaking out about that, but now I have to teach them how to ride their bike. And I'm tired. I don't have time for this. And I'm signing this up a little facetiously because
no, I get it. I totally get it.
I know that I also tell people to do this. I'm like, front load the work. You get the payout on the back end. Trust me. But like, you've done this. So like, how hard was it? And then what, now that you're on the other side is like, where do you see the payout and how do we make this be worth it? Cause it's hard.
Yeah. I think there's a little bit of the myth that it's going to be like extremely hard. I really do. I mean, I think that one thing that I have learned after talking to so many parents after writing Hunt Gather Parent, is that I think one skill that could really help a lot of American parents is letting kids just be upset. Like being okay with just some upset kids, like when Rosie was upset about some of these things, or, I would be like, well, I just love you more. I'm sorry, but I love you more, but just being okay. It's okay for kids to be, I call it like emotional autonomy. It's like, you're upset. It's all right. It's that like that. Right. It's okay. And kids change really fast. I mean, even I have read stories and talked to parents who, a 14-year-old that's been gaming 6 hours a day for years and years and years, and like a week goes by and the kid can change. I mean, they change, and the younger they are, they're going to change even faster. The key though, and I talk about this a lot in the book, is you really have to make the device disappear. Like it can't just be like sitting on your desk drawer, in a cabinet or on the shelf, because now that's the cue. So we get deeper into dopamine science. Like every time the kid sees it, it's going to trigger dopamine. It's going to trigger desire. You're going to be fighting it. You're going to be struggling. So to start off with, you really have to create what I call these sanctuaries where the device or the food is just not an option at all. Like so if the kid gets super upset, they cannot find it. And you're just like, it's done. It's done, and I'm sorry you're upset. But we're going to feel happier. We're going to feel better. And I think it's truly believing that, and truly. So the first part of Dopamine Kids talks a lot about like figuring out what you want as a parent, because I think what we're doing right now is, and maybe you want the kid on the screen for a couple hours every night, but just understand what that means, right? Understand what that means.
I would say, and I can't speak for all parents, but I think when I get pushback from parents around taking screens out of the evening routine, because I talk a lot with parents, in my practice, like, they come to me because there's behavioral challenges, right? Yes. Or sleep challenges or whatever. And I'm like, well, one of the things that makes transitions harder is getting off of a screen. Absolutely. It interferes with sleep. There's a lot of reasons why screens in the evening just make for a nightmare. And I also understand from a very practical standpoint why parents use screens in the evening, because they're multitasking all of their life in that moment. So it's like this big navigational, like challenge, I think, for parents of like, on the one hand, screens give us a little space to do all the stuff we have to do. And it really makes parenting actually a little bit more clunky at nighttime. And absolutely. It makes it harder. Yes. So I'm always kind of encouraging parents to get rid of screens at the night, in the evening especially. Yes. I think one of the reasons why they don't say, I want this. This is a goal of mine. You know, they're just trying to figure out how to survive the I have too much to do. And I think simplifying and monotasking and sometimes that's really hard for working parents, especially. Like, it's not always easier if you have multiple children who need multiple things at once. But I think if I were to channel all of the parents that I work with that want to get things better in the evening time and leverage screens for that. And they say, because your point is like, what do you want? Identifying what you want. It's like, I want ease in the evening. I don't want to have to be super parent, and I don't want to have to be pulled in 15 directions either.
Yes.
And I wonder if maybe just understanding that helps us to then say, okay, the goal isn't how do we use screens as a tool in this moment. I think the goal is how do we bring peace?
Yeah. And I think that's one of the myths out there, right? That this makes your life easier. When I know families that don't use screens in the evenings, and I know families that do, and I can tell you which family has it easier, like much easier. And so I think of it as like right now, a lot of parents are and again, this comes back from, this is like very old psychology, very old neuroscience. You're handling it every day. You're managing it manually. Every day you're pulling kids off. Every day you're you're negotiating. It's like constant friction. It's constant negotiation. And I think for me, it was exhausting. And I'm telling you, if you look at the data, as kids get older, so it feels manageable when they're 8, 9, 10, maybe even in their tweens. But as they get older and there's more devices, more apps, and more independence, it doesn't work. I mean, that's why we see kids on screens for 7 hours out of school, right?
Right, because you can't control a 17-year-old as much as you want to. You can't.
No, and even like a 14-year-old, like what they're doing was right. For me, it's like, okay, let's do this smarter, right? And you don't have to necessarily be stricter, but like the behavioral psychologists will tell you, like, set up the system, right? Set it up once, make it the default. And just make it super clear to the kid, like, no screens after dinner. I put the screens in our dryer. The first couple nights that we were like doing this, I was just like, I don't want her to find them. Like, I want this to be, and yes, there were upsetness, but it was just like I said, like, I just had to be okay with some upsetness. And because I really felt in my heart and this is what our family needs. And I really believed it's going to get easier. And so I put them in the dryer, and it was just like, there are none. And we even had like an outlet timer for a while, but it was just like, it was turned off, and it was just not an option. And what that does, what neuroscience tells us, is that rewires her little brain, and it's fast. It's really fast that, like, after dinner, you go play outside. In the summer, you go play outside, but again, I gave her some more alternatives. Like, you go listen to audiobooks, you go read a book. Audiobooks are a great way to wean kids off screens because they're a little reinforcing. They're a little but they're not as stimulating and they're not as hard to get off. For a while, I was like, I don't even want audiobooks, but now we're back to them. They're great, especially if you're doing art with them and coloring and, creating at the same time. But you can't create this world where the kid is still kind of, like I say, stewing in their cues, right? And so there's the screen is like still there, screaming at them, turn me on, turn me on. It's like it's like a smoker on a plane, right? Like, if the smoker can't smoke, eventually the dopamine system calms down and says, okay, in this context, I mean, that's another thing about the dopamine system. It works in context, right? Like, at this time and in this place, this is where my rewards are, quote unquote rewards. And so if no, this is not available. My reward is outside. My reward is my book. My reward is coloring. Very quickly, they will start just naturally reaching for these activities off the screen, and they will stop wanting them. I mean, there's months that go by now, 6 months go by that it's like, she never asks for it now after dinner, but it slowly went away. It's just not, in this context, is not an option. And our life is peaceful. Our nights are easy. I mean, and we all sleep way better, including myself. I have to
Yeah,
say,
I was going to say,
weaning
like,
me
did you
off was
put
the
your
hardest.
device in the dryer too?
Yeah, I mean, I weaned myself off my phone at night. It took me much longer than Rosie because she was like, pretty young when we did it. But the first couple of weeks, I mean, it took months before I was really like not wanting it, not wanting my phone in the bed.
I know. I'm like very addicted. And I think it's important that we talk about the fact that this is an addiction system. And I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean it, I say that without any like shame
Stigma.
or negative connotation, but like just from a very like the systems we are talking about are the same systems that get activated with any form of addiction. So you talked about smoking as a corollary. You talked about like gambling addiction as a corollary. Like it's not, I mean, the same science we have used to really understand why you're right. Like if a person who smokes goes on an airplane many, many times, their body, their brain really truly starts to chill out the urge to smoke while they're flying because the brain has assimilated to this environmental cue and does not expect the possibility. So it doesn't cue up the urge. It doesn't activate the seeking system in that space.
Because it's useless.
It's useless. And the brain's pretty smart at figuring out where can I and can't I seek.
That's right. For certain things, right? Yes, exactly. It's like it
makes sense to look to the research in that space to kind of inform us. And like, yeah, I think environmental cues, I don't think we appreciate how much they are turning on that system in our brains and our kids' brains.
All the time. And once you start to actually create spaces in your own life, in my own life, once I started to actually create places where I didn't have my phone, it was like incredible to realize how many cues I had created. And not just, I think people don't realize cues aren't just like what you see or what you hear or what you smell. They're also your emotions, right? And your thoughts. And so I had created this cue of like, anytime I was slightly bored or slightly had a pause in life, I checked my phone.
Yes.
So it was like everywhere.
Totally.
Like
I relate to that so much. I think everybody who's listening is like, oh yeah, of course I do that. Because we conditioned ourselves to do that.
Yeah. And for what good? I realized like it was just making me kind of crazy because I was trying to do two things at once all the time, right? I would be like in the store, I'd be heating up the lasagna and then I'm like emailing and then like, what am I, or trying to talk on a group chat text, like, what am I doing? Like what? Yeah. But I mean, that is like how the system kind of hijacks it. Right. And like, and then this idea that we would give a kid a phone and say, go do your homework is just kind of, anyway, yes, exactly. These cues. And that's what scientists have been learning over the last like 2 decades is like just how powerful these cues are in our life. And they decide, they have a big part in, like how our BMI, like how heavy we are, like how we react to food cues. And, because we haven't talked much about ultra processed foods, but like they are designed to like create these really strong cues in our lives. And these cues are like directing us and our children way more. And I think a lot of like parenting for the 21st century is about teaching kids to set up their environment so that they are protected from these cues that are distracting them and pulling them to these things that really don't make them feel good.
Yeah. I mean, it's super valuable. And I think it's interesting. And I wanted to make sure to ask you about this. Like, I know the answer, but like screens and ultra processed foods.
Yes.
I get the link, right?
Yes.
And I get why they fit in a book called Dopamine Kids. But it's not that common that you see these two things as like the focus. Like usually it's like one or the other. Why did you find that these things are a pair? Why are they a matched pair?
Well, they work in the brain really similarly. So dopamine is there to help us get the things we need to survive. One of them is food, right? And so it is the drive. Like we largely eat because the dopamine system is triggering us to go eat. Like that's and then the screens, what's really fascinating in the last like 10 years is psychologists and neuroscientists are realizing that kids are on screens and not on them just kind of casually, like, I'm going to watch a movie once a week, that type of thing, but they're on them for like hours and hours, 5 hours a day, 6 hours a day, because these things make them feel like they're fulfilling fundamental needs in their lives. So social media is fulfilling this fundamental need of belonging. That's huge for humans. Social support, belonging, right? It's giving you this, that's what they say, connection. It's not actually doing that. And I think there's really good data now to show that it's not, and in some ways is robbing us of that. But like video games, right? Kids are on them so much because it feels like they're fulfilling their needs for adventure and exploration and connection too. And so all of these things in our lives are tapping into this motivation system, this willingness to work, to seek out. And that's how they're connected, right? And we also see that almost every kid I know, like it's either a screen problem or an ultra processed food problem or both, right? And so it's like one or the other.
Almost every adult I know too. Like
I know.
But I think another thing that these two things have in common is that they're both highly, highly, highly strategically engineered.
Yes. And we haven't talked about that. Yes, that is exactly right. Like this is not a coincidence, right? Like this is, I talk about in Dopamine Kids, like the history of it. And there's this amazing psychologist, BJ Fogg. Have you heard of him? He wrote this book in 2002, before iPads, and it really, the internet of today, where he talked about how to do this, to tap into people's need for belonging, fear of rejection, need for exploration, need for constant growth. People love to see measurable growth, these numbers, these metrics. And by tapping into that, yes, that's right. Like progress. I call it progress. The need for progress. We love progress. Dopamine drives us to see progress. If we see progress, it's like dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. And he said, you tap into this system through these needs. You make these devices that tap into them, and then people will do whatever you want. Basically, this is what his book said. And we can change what people think. We can change what they value the most in their lives. We can make them argue. We can change their spiritual life. Just this book is incredible. And it's all about tapping in to these really this deep seeking system, like you call it. And that's exactly what the tech industry has done, right? They just took his playbook and did it. And then they actually took a bunch of strategies from the gambling industry, which had created the most addictive screen in the 90s. And they just started putting them into the apps in the games too. And then at the same time, we have the food industry. And I want to point out, like, for a long time, the tech industry did not deny these things. They talked about them. I interviewed engineers that were like, absolutely, this was my job. So these are like, these products that our kids have are made by multi-billion-dollar companies with entire engineering departments whose sole purpose is to keep your kid scrolling and tapping and watching, right?
Right.
And so we are up against a lot. But and then we have the whole food industry, which is still admitting that they are intentionally trying to get you to eat as much as possible and to eat when you're not hungry and to create craving. And I just read this paper from Ashley Gerhardt at the University of Michigan, where it's all about how the tobacco industry bought up ultra-processed food products and used the exact same playbook that they used with tobacco on the foods to engineer. She calls it addiction, right? And I know that term's controversial with foods, but compulsive eating, I think we all agree on,
Well, overriding the ability for the seeking system to get that like full completion of the cycle, to get that, I am done.
That's
these systems, the other thing these two systems have in common is because through this careful engineering is that they activate the system, but they don't allow the system to do its natural flow through the organic cycle. So it's it is the skipping tape the whole time.
Absolutely.
And there's no satisfaction. That's the problem. And then that's why we get stuck. We literally get stuck inside these repeating
loops.
compulsive systems.
Yeah. In fact, like this whole term, like instant gratification, they wanted to put it on the cover of Dopamine Kids. And I was like, no, because we are not in the age of instant gratification. We are in the age of no gratification. Like we are in the age of constant wanting, and because if we were gratified, we would stop,
We would stop.
That's right.
one neuroscientist in our satisfied, restful, like exhale.
Exactly.
Oh, that was a good meal. Or, that was a good game. Or that was a good show. We never get that exhale because the next thing loads.
That's right. And it's bottomless, right? If you have that feeling of like, oh, I'm kind of done watching these goat videos, then it's like, no, here's something else, don't be done. Never be done. And I think there's something to it with kids that's harder because I think kids are wired to repeat. If you watch the children, they repeat things to practice, right? They love repeating. And I think that it's really exploiting that need to repeat. But one neuroscientist at Virginia Tech, Reed Montague, big dopamine guy, like really early experiments, amazing neuroscientist. He calls them like skeletal rewards because they're kind of missing pieces. Like if you think about the food, it's a good one. Like ultra processed foods have fat, they have salt, they have huge amounts of refined carbs, a lot of them, but they're missing like fiber. They're missing the plant structure. They're missing like they're kind of, and it's that part that gives us that satisfaction, right? And so they're skeletal. He says the same thing about social media. It's like a skeletal model of your friendships in your social network. And then what happens over time with kids, he says, is that it pushes out the real thing. And so you're just kind of left with this skeletal model. And I think that's right. That's what I'm like, that's what we have to prevent. And that's why we create these sanctuaries where, in-person relationships are the only option.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the big risks when you do over-index and allow kids to over-participate in the skeletal versions of things is that, for a grown-up who's being introduced to these things later in life.
Yes.
I mean, screens. I mean, we had ultra-processed foods when we were growing up, but not quite the same way as we do now. But like certainly screens and tech, like we didn't have it in our childhood in the way that kids do now. And it's like, so we got this baseline.
That's right.
Our foundation was built with more tactile realness and gravity. Yeah. And so our frameworks still hold that essential, like the not skeletal versions of things, like the true things. Like we know what it's like to make a new friend and get into a fight and figure it out and go back and like ride our bikes together the next day and like
and laugh with your friend so hard you pee in your pants.
Yeah.
That's what like Rosie does. I'm like, Fred, you gotta stop peeing your pants. But like she's so enjoying her friends, right? Like that that you just can't do on social media.
Right. And I think the risk is when we give kids access to so much of the zero gravity, two-dimensional, skeletal versions of things. One, they prefer it because it's easier, it's faster.
That's right.
But also they start to think that is the real thing.
That's exactly right.
They don't actually know. Like I know the difference between a real in-person complex relationship, but that I built from the ground up and has had its ups and downs that lasted, multiple years in my childhood to the sort of like, I know who you are through social media. I know the difference. I know what that feels like. It's like a felt sense difference.
That's right.
And I think our kids are risking that they don't actually always really do know the difference. And there's confusion around that. And I think as parents from the generation that we have where we lived in both worlds, I think sometimes we take for granted that our kids are able to discern. And I think actually the reality is they may not be as able to discern as we think they are because we're projecting our frameworks onto them that we built from being in both worlds. I don't know. I'm like thinking this out as I'm not exactly sure if this makes sense, but like, it's just a hypothesis, but
I think that there's very good data to show that it's called sign tracking. I think I've brought this up. Like it's in Dopamine Kids, but animals, all animals, including people, over time start to confuse the signal or cue for a real reward for the real thing. They start to transfer the value. And so I think you're absolutely right. I think that kids, and adults too, I think I did this. I think I fell into this trap where you start to mistaken what really is a signal for social support, right? Like a social media post, social media friends, text groups. These are signals for real support, right? You need to be with the person to get real support. So it's kind of like when neuroscientists say it's like a promissory note for social support that's going to come in the future, right? And that's what I kind of use my phone for now, right? Is to like set up real events, right? Real meetings. But I think you're absolutely right. I think there's very good evidence that as kids kind of become so embedded and entrenched on social media and on text groups, they confuse the real friendship, the real interaction for that. And they stop seeking it out, right? They stop seeking out the real thing. And I think that that's when we get, really lonely kids and you start to see some of the bad mental health problems that, we all know about, right? Is because you're not getting the you're not getting the pleasure, you're not getting, the touch, the laughter, the real deal, right? And
the satisfaction,
which you actually absolutely need, as
so,
humans.
Okay, I think this is so helpful to understand why these things are doing what they are to us. And I think anyone who's listening probably is like, I agree. Okay, I'm on board. So one, just get Michaeleen's book, Dopamine Kids, and read it. But let's also maybe end with just some things that can be helpful to do. Yeah. My guess is it doesn't have to be massive overhauls of your whole life, right?
Like, in fact, like neuroscience will tell you, or behavioral psychology will tell us, do not make massive overhauls. They are not going to work. You're just going to end up like 30 days after your detox. You're just going to kind of end up in the same place you're at. Like it's not how we change, right? It's really, it's like very small, but permanent. That's what I say in the book. Like you want to think very small changes that almost seem boring and like totally doable. But they're permanent. You're not going back. So the metaphor is kind of like, if you want to lose weight, you pick like one thing you're never going to eat again. I'm never going to eat a Snickers bar again. And it's like, that's it. It's gone.
You grieve the loss of it and you're done.
That's right. And you're done. It doesn't matter what you weigh, that's never coming back. So we want to try to find these little tiny things that we can do that will start to move us towards our goal, right? What we want in our lives, and start to bring calmness back and pleasure back. One of the things I think, but they're easy and they're doable. One of the things I think is a really great place to start, and maybe your listeners will not agree, but from my research, is this like screens on the go thing. What I think that when we carry screens in the car and we carry them at restaurants, and we're basically just training our kids, like this is the time that we're on the screen, like basically all of our life on the go.
Like transition moments.
Yes, exactly.
Use screens for transition moments.
Yes, exactly. We're training them that. And we're also training them that when we're bored, we use screens. So we start to like every transition moment of our lives becomes a moment for screens. But what we're doing is we're getting up this amazing opportunity when kids are bored, and like when like if they don't have a screen there, they have a book, or a sketch pad or heck, maybe you talk to you, so I think we could start there. Like it's like even on long trips, like even just try it, try it out. I remember the first long trip, we got rid of the screen in the back seat, and there was some, gripey and stuff. But again, just let it be. She picked up some random book that was like sitting in the car forever and like read the whole thing. And I was just like, whoa, this is because she was bored, and I think that boredom cue, like training that boredom cue for like, oh, this means I read. This means I play the piano. This means I go talk to people. I go outside. Like if we could train our kids for that trigger, that cue to be something offline, I think that'll be like a gift for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. What that makes me think of is like, okay, so if we have this one note seeking system, right? If we've trained our brain to every time the seeking system gets activated, we immediately give it one thing, the screen.
Yes.
It doesn't teach us to differentiate and diversify what our seeking system goes after. It's like,
beautiful.
I only go to this one thing over. But it's like, if I don't have that one thing, what does actually end up replacing it is many things, anything.
That's
and really
right.
We're teaching ourselves to just seek.
I love that. I hadn't thought of it that way, but that is really beautiful, right? And so if you don't have that thing, you're just like, if you haven't created these other desire pathways, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you're exactly right. The video game addiction world talks about this, that when kids really try to get over their video addiction, they have to replace it with like 6 different types of activities, because it's exactly what you say. It's fulfilling like all these desires. I need something that's calming. I need something that's stimulating. I need something that's outside or like feels outside, right? Like it's just gaming, right? But life is so much richer than that. So yeah, you're exactly right. You start to add all this color to your life instead of just this one note that you just keep going, hitting every time. It's a really beautiful way of putting it.
That's reason alone to give it a shot, right? Like add some color, add some diversity and some who knows what to our life.
And I think you'll be surprised. Again, it's like a couple, you're going to have to like put up with a little bit of discomfort with your child, but a little discomfort is good for them. It's really good for them.
And it's good for us.
And yourself. Really, exactly.
It's an exercise in distress tolerance for everyone. And it doesn't feel comfortable. I imagine it doesn't. Like I am telling myself this as I'm like, okay, the reason that I have avoided giving up my phone and really, really addressing my phone addiction, because I have one for sure, is because it's uncomfortable. It's much more comfortable for me to have my phone by my bed at night. It will be more uncomfortable for me to keep it in the kitchen. And yet I know that's what I need to do. Like I know that's what Sarah Bren needs to do. I don't think that's what everyone needs to do, but like I know that's what I need to do. And I don't do it because it's uncomfortable.
Yes.
So I'm going to have to maybe I'll hold myself accountable and actually have to report back to the listeners here on the podcast. Call me up, email me in a month and see if I have done it. But I'm like I'm like so in that. I'm so ready. I'm almost ready. I've told my kids, I'm like, I'm going to get a brick. I'm going to give it to you guys. But I'm going to give it to them.
That's a great idea. I love that idea. Oh my gosh. Give it to the kids.
So now I've said it publicly. I'm not sponsored by Brick, but please, Brick, send me a brick because I'm going to give it to my kids and I'll document it.
Yeah. And then I can do a story on it. I love this because what you're doing, and you touched on this a little bit, like you're getting them into this system, right? You're getting them to be an accountability partner.
They're young enough. They're 6 and 8. So like they don't have their own tech really yet. That like, they watch me on my tech and they find it quite irritating. They're not afraid to tell me how much of a-hole I am about my phone. And like,
I love it.
Yeah. So I'm like, fine, I'm going to and I've told them, because like in moments where I'm feeling really bold and like I want to do it, I like will tell them. And then I like want to backtrack. But like, I should get a brick and give it to my kids and then I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah. Or have them control the, I guess if you're on Wi-Fi or if you're on your cell service, it doesn't, but have them get a outlet and have them control the outlet to your router. Have your 8-year-old control your router. No,
but that's so much. But yeah, that's what we should do.
Yeah, I mean, this is how it works. I mean, like we really weaned ourselves off ultra processed food, but it was a team effort. It is Rosie, my daughter, and me together, like totally. And
but I think strategically, that's another really important thing when parents are like, how do I do this? Is like, if you can position it as you and me versus the problem versus me versus you, and help them become part of like the inside of it all, and like pull back the curtain and say like, this is controlling us and I don't like it and you don't like it and nobody likes being controlled. Like I want to give you the power back.
Yes.
And like, the power of me and my phone addiction, right? If I give my kid the brick, that gives them this like taste of power, which I think actually can be really therapeutic and healthy for all of us.
I think it would be huge. Like, and I think what it will do is it will give you cred when you're like flipping it around and trying to take it away from, right? I mean, right. Yeah. It's like, and you touch on something we haven't mentioned, but is a huge part of it. And it's something you can do pretty easily is really think about how you talk about these things, right? Because language is so powerful, right? And if we constantly talk about screens and ultra processed foods as like the rewards in life, like we're just cranking up motivation for them. But what you're talking about is the opposite. It's like starting to look at the cost, right? And how it hurts us and how it's built to control us and make us just want more. And like, and then hype up the good things, the things that make us feel good. Yeah. I'm like the hype woman in our house for like salmon and pupusas and kimchi and like, it's like,
I love it.
Yeah. But
it's the way
matters.
It's like, it does matter. And like, I do think it is really important. Like if you want your kid, you got to speak your kid's language. You got to find what is interesting and motivating to them. And you know what no kid likes? No kid likes to be told what to do.
That's
and
right.
What they really, really hate is if big tech is trying to steal their attention and tell them what to do and get one over on them and trick them into giving them all of their attention. And does that feel
their money,
right?
I mean, it's money.
Oh my God. That is the best way to get kids interested in this a little bit. Like, because really it does this really strong developmental need to like not be controlled by somebody else.
Yes. Injustice, right? There's like justice.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think we talk about it all the time. And I think as kids get older, it's like more important, right? Like the tweens and the teens and like really like one of the neuroscientists told me like before they gave their son social media, I think he was like 13 or something. He gave him a full PowerPoint slide on like how the device taps into the dopamine system and makes you sign track and creates these cues. And he called it the talk. And he was like, and then there was like a whole thing of like, okay, how much of your time do you want to give to this manipulative device and like working it out. And then the parent's job is to help hold them to their plan, right? As they get older and like be their like cerebral cortex, so to speak. And really, work with them. Like they come up with it, you come up with it. But Sarah, I have to tell you, getting rid of the phone in the bed, I was, 10, 15 years. It was really hard. And there were nights I was pacing around the living room, like not wanting to go to bed because I was like afraid of like whatever it's going to feel like. Yeah. But I have to tell you, it's been 18 months now, I think. And I just sleep so well. Like sleep so well. I cannot go back. Like it really affects. I think we're just so used to it,
No. Yeah. We're creatures of comfort and habit. And I think it's time for me. I'm willing to like, I'm saying this on like in public. I have to do it now.
It is like really like, I know I thought of that. I'm writing a book on that I'm saying I'm doing all these things. And then what happens if like, no.
No, it's good. It's motivating.
It is motivating.
It's turning on my dopamine system for a different seeking thing. Like, okay.
But then you create all these cues that like you lay down and like all the cues are like fall asleep and you just lay down and you just fall asleep. And you're like,
I want that.
What?
And
where's the struggle?
Like, what is your real want? My real want is to be able to lay down and just like fall asleep. Like, and I have all these things that I've built into my life that get in the way of that. It's not logical. I understand that, but this has been incredible. If people want to follow your work, you've written, I love Hunt, Gather, Parent, incredible book. And now Dopamine Kids, it is now out. Go get it. It is really worth reading. How can they connect with you, stay up to date on all the cool stuff that you're working on and writing?
So I'm not on social media because I can't handle it. My little dopamine system is not strong enough for social media. But I have a website. I spent all this time and money to make this really nice website, and I'm going to put everything up there. And you can absolutely email me on there, and I will definitely read it. And I want people to use the website. It doesn't trick you. into scrolling or anything. So it's just information. And I would love to hear from you. And I'd love for people to try things in the book and tell me how it goes, because we're in uncharted territory. We really are as parents. And so we just got to try and pay attention to what gives us that feeling, like what makes you just feel like, I've had enough and and my life is good right now,
Yes. Oh, I think that is such a good place to orient ourselves to.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for writing this book, for coming on to talk about it with us, and we'll talk soon.
Okay. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
If you enjoyed listening to this conversation, I want to hear from you. Share your thoughts and your feedback with me by scrolling down to the ratings and review section on your Apple Podcast app or whatever app you're listening on, and let me know what you think of this episode or the show in general. Your support means the absolute world to me, and just a simple tap of 5 stars can make a real impact in how this show gets reached by parents everywhere. So thank you so much for listening, and don't be a stranger.